Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to the Flowing Health podcast. Alessandro here, and today I've got Mike Pagan, who's a mental wealth strategist. And I'm very interested in mental health, but mental wealth was quite a new terminology, and I just love that terminology because I think we could all do with both. Well, we all need mental health, but mental wealth sounds even more exciting, or as exciting. So welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our chat.
Yes, exactly. And we both put nice shirts on because we're on audio now, and we're on audio and we're on video. So we both made a bit of an effort.
Yes, I even went and found an iron.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. So Mike's book is here for those who visually can see it, but I'll just mention it's called Mental Wealth. Unlock Your Potential, Enrich Your Life, a brilliant book. And I went to a conference recently and Mike was a speaker there, and it was just one of the best talks I've heard in recent years about the importance of self-care and taking care of your mental wealth and your mental wealth group, which we're going to come to soon. So Mike, maybe just a little bit, some background about yourself and anything that maybe defined, the direction of your life. So maybe something that happened that made you go in the direction of being a mental wealth strategist and helping other people with their own lives.
Yeah, well, thank you. To start off, the first thing I always will say is mental wealth is clearly a play on the language of mental health. I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a trained counselor. That's not my world. My world is very much about the world of mental wealth, of having the right support network around us that's fit for purpose for the way forward. So we have challenges involving isolation and the negative effects of what happens when we're in isolation. And before the pandemic recently, there was still isolation. Be that as a chief exec of a multi-billion-dollar business with 5,000 employees, or a solopreneur working from the spare room on a laptop. This whole essence of isolation, where we haven't got people around us asking good questions, challenging what we're doing, and the people we think are in our support bubble and our support network aren't fit for purpose for the way forward. So you land up having this isolation, sort of not able to make decisions, creativity goes out the window. And then we get into that ugly world of procrastination, and then that can take us down the negative spiral into poor mental health. So the roundabout focus is very much of when we build a positive mental wealth balance. So think of it like a bank balance, putting positive in there, then we're able to make braver decisions, have good people around us holding us accountable for the things we say we're going to do. And when things go wrong, we'll bounce back more effectively. And then in turn, as a result of that, we have more fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Wouldn't that be simple and easy? But that's the point.
We're
on this planet to enjoy ourselves. If we've got good people around us, we will enjoy ourselves more of the time, most of the time.
Exactly. And I love this term of the mental wealth bubble or group that you mentioned. Do you want to talk a little bit about the measuring of that? Because at the conference, what I noticed was that when you described it, that I was a very good supporter of people in my group, but I wasn't very good at allowing people to support me or receiving support. So will you explain a little bit more about how we can look at that and how we can check whether we have a healthy mental
it's a reality check that many people have, and thank you for your honesty in what you're sharing there, that you realized actually I'm not looking after myself that well. I haven't got the right people. And it's the classic example here is if you were a professional sportsman or woman, there are 35 people approximately that will keep you on the track, in the pool, or on the pitch. They're looking after your mind, they're looking after your physicality, they're looking after you, and all of these things. The day you retire from that sport, the guillotine comes down, and all of those people are no longer fit for purpose for the way forward, because your life is transitioning and it evolves and moves forward. I've had the privilege of working with professional elite sportsmen and women going through that transition space. And that's what really triggered and helped me in my understanding of mental wealth, because that focus of transition, we are all transitioning. There are people before the pandemic who were brilliant for us at that time, but are no longer fit for purpose going forward, for where our business is evolving, for where our individuality is evolving. So we need to know who has got our back for the way forward. And so the scoring system I put together, which is totally subjective, it's not scientific, but it's designed in a way that you just write down a list of all the names of people who you believe have got your back, are in your support network. And it's just, whilst I talk now, just write those people down, and then give them a score out of 10. When 1 is a low score, 10 is a high score. Don't be over complimentary because you think he or she will be upset if they didn't get a 10, or whatever it is. Just go with your gut feel. You're not sharing this with anybody, and just put those numbers in place. And what I've found over the years of doing this is the number of people who turn around and they sort of get a bit of a shock, because for the purpose of the time, if people score 1 to 7, they're either an acquaintance, a work colleague, or a friend, but they're not part of your inner sanctum. They're not somebody you're willing to be mentally, physically, emotionally naked and vulnerable with. Those are your 8, 9s, and 10s. So I've got friends I've been with for years, and they're scoring 6s and 7s. But it's these 8, 9s, and 10s. And from your response and other responses I get regularly, I find people have got nobody scoring 8, 9, or 10 for them, or just 1. And that's okay, because that's a baseline. Now we need to recruit and proactively go and source these great people that are fit for us going forward. And this is about looking after number 1. It's that word selfish, which people think is a bad word. We need to be a little bit selfish about what we need to do, who we want around us, and saying goodbye to people or giving space to people who are no longer or aren't right for us, and then proactively recruit the people who are going to give us that va-va-voom, ask better questions of us than we do, or we're brave enough to ask of ourselves, and also just come at things from a slightly different angle to give us further insights and wisdom and cleverness that we wouldn't necessarily find.
Yeah, I mean, and when you say recruit those people, do you find, when I think of my group of people, my feeling is that I need to kind of cultivate some of them to become 8, 9s, and 10s, because it sounds like recruiting new people is quite an effort to go from 0 if I don't know them. So do you find it's a mix of the two, or just it can be?
It's a gradual process. We're not going to suddenly go from 1 or 2 people who've really got our back to 14 in 3 weeks. This is an ongoing process where you are then looking at I know, for example, there's a particular chap in my extended network. He's not part of my sort of mental wealth team, as I'd call it, not an 8, 9, or a 10, but it's almost like I've got a bit of a crush, which I know sounds a bit odd, but it's sort of, I'd love him to be more involved and more proactively involved, but I haven't found the reason or the benefit for us for mutual gain. And it doesn't have to be mutual gain to make this work. This has to work for you as the individual, but there has to be something and an understanding. And it might be that I just have to pay him, because that's the point. As a professional, there are certain skills that you do have to share some coin with to get the right people around you. But it's knowing how to be selective who those people are. And then if you've got voids, if you've got gaps, go to the people that are already in that inner sanctum and get their advice, because they're the ones who make a difference. A classic example for me on this, I recently was looking at some different life cover and critical illness cover, because I'm over 21, so apparently I'm meant to have these things. My finance, my wealth manager was looking into this, and he came back with some suggestions. And I said, well, have you considered this one over here that I'd looked up? And his response was, I've worked with this chap, and he told me, when you recruit and you respect the expert advice that you pay for, you don't second guess it and try and come up with other ideas for it, which was his unsubtle way of saying, let me do my job. I've done the research. The one you've come up with wasn't on my shortlist because it doesn't suit you. Get over it, get out of the way. And it's just, again, I've got a property challenge going on in Spain at the moment, which is coming towards a conclusion. And I was talking to the solicitors yesterday, and I said, okay, I put you in place. You're the experts. Are you telling me this is the best deal I'm going to get, and I should take it and walk away and suck up the losses and go with it and whatever else? To which the response was yes.
Yeah. What's the point of arguing with that? Yeah.
That's the thing. You ask for their advice, take their knowledge, skills, wisdom, and expertise, and go with it. But that's because you've recruited them, you trust them, you've done your research beforehand. They've been recommended by other people you trust. So therefore, there's no perfect world. I mean, mistakes will still happen, even with a supportive mental wealth team around you. But because you will have dug into this correctly, you've had good questions, you've had good emotion-free discussions about what you're trying to do. If the wheels do come off, something goes wrong, you'll still bounce back more effectively because you've already done the research in the first place.
Yeah. Especially since the pandemic, I think many of us have had a lot more conversations, online, and met people virtually. And what I've noticed is, for me personally, I'm asking myself, which conversations do I need to stop having, and which conversations do I need to start having in order to go deeper? And I've noticed recently, as I've connected more with, I don't know, call them like-minded people, just people either who I admire or who I'm really interested in what they do, by asking questions and listening, they're becoming fans of me as well. And that those kind of people, I like those kind of conversations, but I've had to stop many others. And I think,
well, there's something that I set up in the last year, because like you, through the lockdown times, I've had some fascinating conversations on Zoom through left field connections that have created and whatever. And so I wrote to 15 people, and I said, it was quite a clever thought bubble, even for me. And I just said, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I really enjoyed the time that we've spent when we've been chatting on Zoom, and I don't want to lose the connection because in 3 months' time we haven't spoken and we forget who each other is. We're a group of intelligent minds, and I'd love to explore ways that we can continue having conversations and bring other people into it, just as a support network for each other, and get to know each other. That some of these people are based in the States, they're based in Indonesia, they're based in India, they're based in Europe, and so it's a totally global setup. So it's not that I'm going to go and bump into them tomorrow and have a coffee and a cake with them. So you haven't got that opportunity. It's purely a virtual environment, but we called it Intelligent Minds. And as a result of it, indirectly, that's one of the reasons why you and I have met, because one of the ladies involved in that is a mutual connection of ours, that I invited into that group. And we have genderless discussions, getting to know each other, and a different viewpoint, script, perspective from other sides of the planet as to what's going on and how we can help. And yeah, there's always going to be somebody that talks more than somebody else, and others that you have to prize a bit more information out of. But that's the reality, and it's a great way of just feeding in quality. Which and none of them, I would say, are part of my mental wealth team. They're just good associated colleagues and connections who would score 6s and 7s for me now.
And would you call that a mastermind group or not?
Loosely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because is masterminding something you talk about regularly yourself or not?
It is. I love the concept, and I used to think until I met you that it was Napoleon Hill. So maybe could you tell us, and the audience, many people don't really know what a mastermind is truly, but I'd love the story about when it started and the Lunar Society and all that.
Oh, it's a different reality. So our American friends will claim the credit through Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, which includes sort of stories about Ford and other people. But that was not the beginning of masterminding. No. It goes back to the 1760s in Birmingham in the UK, which is only just up the road from where I live. And there were luminaries of the time, Erasmus Darwin, Matthew Bolton, other people like this, and they were challenging the standards of that time. It was during the Industrial Revolution. What they were coming up with, some of their ideas were pushing the boundaries of religion in those days as well. So there was potential heresy they could be accused of for some of their ideas and creative thinking. So they had to meet in secret, and they met under the full moon at night. So they met up, and this society became known as the Lunar Society because they met under the full moon. But it was everything that went on in this discussion, and it was gentlemen in those days, but they just were in total confidence. So what they said in the room stayed in the room, but they were all from different backgrounds, different industries, different cleverness, different ideas. And they would just challenge each other, ask better questions of each other to make sure they got good answers. And then as a result of that, one person would come up with a left field thought that would help the other, and vice versa. And that is what masterminding is. It is in confidence. It is very focused on the individual that's in the hot seat at that particular time. Everybody else in the room, there could be 5, 6, 7 others. I generally wouldn't say you want more than 8 in a mastermind group, because then it takes a long time to get everybody through. But that's not to say they can't work, but generally you have, I'd say 6 to 8 maximums. And that those questions are put in, and without solutions to begin with. It's all about, Alessandro, have you considered this way? Have you looked at that way? Without saying, well, if I was you, I would do A, B, and C. And at the end of that time that person's in the hot seat, they commit to specific actions that they will complete before the next meeting. And if it happens to be at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning before that next meeting, they still turn up having done it, because those are the 2 absolute rules of masterminding. Must be in confidence and must be held accountable to what they're saying they're going to do. And then as a result of that, it then moves on to the next person in the group and so on. So everybody gets their time in the hot seat, which means you've got these brilliant consultant brains challenging you and everything else that's happening. And you've got clarity of what you're going to do as a result of it going forward. And for me, it's one of the most powerful tools out there, especially when it's run. So that Intelligent Minds group I was saying before isn't quite a mastermind group, because what we talk about can be used outside of the room. And also we don't have the same degree of accountability, because it's more than just chewing the cud and having a chat, but it's not as brutal as a proactive and focused mastermind can be.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm definitely going to be starting these groups. I mean, I've been in a few men's groups. I mean, there's so many groups for women these days, and there aren't that many for men. So I just wanted to test them out. And they're very powerful. But what I was going to ask about the mastermind, do you find that they can be mixed? Do you prefer them, men and women, or doesn't it matter these days? I think in the old days, it sounds like it was more men, which is not right necessarily, but that's just the way it was. But do you just let them form in the way that they form?
I would say, as with any board of directors, because there's an organization that I know of that runs, and they refer to it as the board you could never afford. which is nice language and terminology. And so if this is meant to be a board that you're reporting into and you're supporting, the more diverse, the more creative, the more chance you're going to have left field thinking going on. So if everybody is male, stale and pale and old, as was the historical way, then that was the problem with many a board back in the day, and still far too many are like that today. Then you're not going to have the creative injection of left field. You're not going to have somebody with a different viewpoint, different religious background, a different blood background, whatever it is. So I would say, dependent on what the objective of the mastermind group is, the more diverse, the more likely you are going to find some creative thinking and some inspiring juices and ideas and thoughts coming out the back of it.
Yeah, because I've been in a few, and I have to say I wasn't so inspired, but then I think they didn't really follow these rules that you mentioned. I think they used,
and the other part is, just sorry to jump in, you won't fit. Yeah, you walk into a networking group, you walk into a bar, you walk into the church or a school canteen or whatever it is, and there are certain rooms you walk into and you just smell wrong. It's the atmosphere, it's the energy, it's the whole setup. It just doesn't feel right for you. And in which case, don't apologize, don't be embarrassed, move on.
Yeah,
and that's the same with mastermind groups. If it's testosterone fueled and lots of rah 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 and nonsense like that, and that's not your way of working, then move on. If it's all a bit nice and a bit soft and a bit too cuddly, and that's not your style, then move on. It really is an environment where we need to test those groups that you join, or if you're setting up your own, then you invite 2 or 3 people and get them to invite 2 or 3 people themselves.
Yeah.
So the fact that you've asked Claire to invite an extra person along, she knows what you're looking for and will therefore try and match the criteria that you're focused on. You're more likely to get some others in there. You don't want 6 of your friends in there, because then they all know you, and you're not going to get this new knowledge and new insights that you would get otherwise.
Beautiful. I love that advice. Thank you so much. Because I think the one I was in, I think there were 11 women and myself. And of course, I was flattered to be the only man among 11 women, but it was very controlled, and it was very, if I think what I know now, I would have left immediately. But at the time, it seemed like, let me just follow this down the road. And actually, it got even more controlling, and then lots of infighting. And it just, then I left, and I thought, I'm never going to join that kind of group again. So I think I could pick it up now. But these are great tips for people who want to set up, and I'm definitely going to be setting up.
It goes back to the foundation of mental wealth, which is self-care.
Yeah.
If we look after and have the right people around us, then we can make better decisions. So the mastermind group you're recruiting and you're getting involved with have got to bring that strength. The self-care environment where you are in your world of Qigong, you know the balance and how from the breathing techniques and everything else that you briefly taught me in the past. And so it's incredible. But I've always jokingly said that I can't do meditation and mindfulness because I can't sit still for long enough, or I fall asleep. But then over the last few years, I've realized that I have practiced active mindfulness for years.
Yeah.
Be that through my sports training and other things, sort of whether you're out walking, cycling, whatever else. I do a lot of open water swimming. And it's that stroke after stroke after stroke. If you're in a lake for a long period of time, then you get out fresh as a button. Because the water's invigorated you. Chances are, I'm in the UK, it's not that warm either. But you've got that freshness, and the brain has cleared. Well, that's part of my self-care. But for me, I get up early in the morning before my family's awake on a Sunday, and by the time I get home, 9:30, the dog might have been walked. The bread might have been baked if I turned on the bread maker the night before, which I used to do, but I haven't done for a long time. But that sort of thing, so I'm not inconveniencing others, but it works for me. So it's part of my self-care, looking after me being number one rather than number 6, which is how I always used to think of myself, with a wife, 3 kids and a dog. And lots of puppies at the beginning of the year, but that's another story. I would always put myself at the bottom of the list, which is not healthy. It's not how we're meant to be, even though we try and be superhuman and fix it for everybody else.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think if I put myself higher up on the list, I'd probably attract other people who are high up on their list, and altogether we can make a massive difference. So that's a great tips on setting up our own groups. And you've swum the English Channel, so no need to be modest about that. Tell us a little bit.
As a relay, not a solo. I must put that in. Yeah.
Okay, and relay means you handed, how many miles did you do and then someone else did?
So there were 6 of us, so we were a full relay team, and that meant it's 22 miles in a straight line. The tide was so big when we did it, we actually did 35 miles.
Wow, each?
No, that was the total swim.
Oh, total.
Then you do an hour each and then hand over to the next person. I'm training for my biggest swim ever in about 6 weeks from now, which is in the UK. There's a lake called Windermere, which is the longest lake in England, and that's an 11-mile swim that I will do on my own. So there's been a lot of fitness going on for that. I'm hurting and tired at the moment.
Wow.
But looking forward to enjoying my celebratory beverage at the end of that one.
And are you doing that on your own, or a group of you? Or?
No, that's solo. That's
solo. But people following you presumably on a boat, or?
Yes, there's a group. There's several hundred people actually going to do it. So I'm not doing it as a team. Everybody's doing it as a solo. And there'll be faster people in there that are like fish. There'll be slower people in there who are will find it tough to do it in the time available. And I'm not overly fast, but I've got a good battery. Is my
yeah. Gosh, and have you swum? That's 11 miles, is it? Did you say?
That I've never done that before. Longest I've done is just over 3 hours. So I've got potentially double that, depending on what the weather is like, the wind and the waves and the chop and everything like that. Hopefully it'll be a mill pond and it will just float along and it will be beautiful in the sunshine.
You'll be floating in the breeze, but you will have to paddle a bit.
Just a touch, yes.
Yeah, but I think,
but that's part of what I do, and I suppose it's one of those areas where it's translating that for those listening and watching. What are those things that are a little bit different that you do and you enjoy? For me, open water swimming. I know that's not for everybody, but the things that make us feel a little bit weird are the things that make us unique, and that's what makes us interesting. From hobbies to sports to religions to volunteering to whatever it is that we do that somebody else might think is a little bit weird, that's their translation. But there's other people out there doing the same things, and we need to do more of that. Because that's looking after number one. If we're doing the things that work, I've got a friend of mine who he's German and he has become a complete coffee nut. He had a very, very smart coffee machine, and then I saw him a short while ago after a significant birthday, and he's now got an even smarter one. And I was looking at it, it looked like some contraption that you could brew whiskey in, and it was just pouring out these little shots of coffee. But it's a hobby of his. He's very passionate, very excited about it, and he's doing all the learning and everything else that goes with it. And it works for him. And that's the point. We need to find those things that work for us, so that we've got these hobbies, we've got these pastimes, get away from the screens, and that way we can then spend those times on things that work, rather than self-sabotaging our performance by having ill-serving habits, screen time, Netflix and box sets, alcohol, whatever it is. These are all things that just use up our time, energy, and effort in areas where we can't get that time back. So if we can't get it back, then it's lost. If it's lost, then it's gone.
But I think what you said earlier, you find it hard to sit, or mindfulness, but actually in a way your swimming to me is being present to that. You're focused. That's your mindfulness. I know mindfulness coaches who are not useless, but I would never work with them because they don't look very healthy. So what does that mean, mindfulness? It just means, well, it's been around for thousands of years, as we know, in Buddhism, in Qigong and everything, but now it's become a science. But it's lost a bit of its kind of magic. And I agree with you, when we find something we can be really present to or with, that makes us, that fills us up and kind of stimulates us. And I agree with you, it doesn't have to be something weird, but I know during lockdown I got very close to trees.
Yeah.
I've always liked trees, but because I was on my own and I was going for walks, suddenly I found myself 20 minutes in front of a tree, just observing, thinking, look at this, it's 80% dead, 20% living, and the 20% living part is only living because the dead part is supporting it. I thought, look at that, that's just magic. How does it do that? And then I thought of myself as a human. I'm not half dead, half alive, but we're all heading, someday it will happen. So we have all that in us, the two aspects. And I think it's just to honor who we are and be present and enjoy finding what really stimulates us and brings us alive. I love that.
Definitely. It goes back to that whole foundations and strength of what we have. When we've got good people around us, we're not isolated, then we are in that position where doing stuff we enjoy and having fun. Yes, we've still got to put bread on the table. Yes, we've still got to have a roof over and so. So I'm not saying that we can all just drop and run and everything. That's not the point. It's knowing what we do where we can balance that. And if we've not got the right balance, then we ask for help from other people. And asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And this is one of the greatest challenges so many of us have, is putting our hands up. And sadly, when I was writing the book on mental wealth, I lost a friend to suicide. And I don't tell you that story just to claim anything particular, aside of the fact that had the right people been asking the right questions at the right time of this particular gentleman, there may have been a different outcome. I'm not saying there would have been, but there may have been. And this is always our challenge we have, when there are so many people that we haven't spoken to recently, haven't had a conversation with, where actually gut feel says, I really should reach out to Bob, to Claire, to whoever. And my call here is, I don't want you to text them. I don't want you to tweet them. I don't want you to Insta high five them, whatever it is. Pick up the phone and ring them. Better still, if you live local, go and see them. You do not know what is going on in somebody else's world, where you just putting that little bit of effort into asking a better question of them at the right time, at the right place, might be life-changing. And at worst, they just think you're a good person for doing it, and they'll reach out to you at a later date when you might not be in the strongest of positions, and you'll receive it. It's back to that whole philosophy of pay it forward. And we can all do more of that, and should do more of that. Just pay it forward, looking out for others, because as a result of that, we'll have more fun. They'll have more fun because they've got better people around them.
Yeah, beautiful. So I mean, I've started doing that now. If my intuition says call so-and-so, even if I haven't for 6 months or a year, I just do. And
definitely.
More often than not, they're very delighted. And we have a really good chat, and it happens the other way around. If I'm called by somebody after ages, I'm really, honored and happy. And I think maybe we can leave on that positive note to kind of ask for help when needed, and go out and help, whenever possible. And, whenever we think that somebody might be in need, or even if they're not, just if our intuition tells us to keep in touch with them.
No, it does make a big difference, and it's not trying to be all sanctimonious and all worthy and everything else. It's just being a good human being.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we can make a difference. And that sort of takes us to that whole final point of, when we get that right team around, it's knowing there are other people who are in different situations. But when we turn around, put the hand up and say, I really could do with your thoughts, I could do with something else. Then as a result of that conversation, we find a different answer, a different track, a different solution. and then apply that. And wow, we have more fun.
Yeah.
Keeps on coming back to that loop of fun.
Yeah, and it does come back to us. It's all received back. Thank you so much, Mike. So your book is, I assume it's on Amazon, isn't it? I think.
Oh yeah. Amazon's available, or through mikepagan.com. Yeah, it's easy to find me.
And we'll put your links in the notes. And
thank you very much. If you do reach out to me via LinkedIn, if anybody does, please say in the sort of connection request that you've met me through Alessandro. So it makes it so much easier to know, because I can remember what I was talking about, and then I can know where you're coming from. Yeah. Rather than it being one of those impersonal ones that just pop in and you don't know where and how or who.
Yeah, I get we
get
easier. Loads of those. Yeah. So thank you so much, Mike. All the best. When is Windermere that we can follow you?
Oh, that's the beginning of September 22. So it's only just around the corner.
Oh, it's not far off. Yeah. So the weather will still be hopefully quite mild, and we look forward to following your journey. And I really appreciate you joining us today. And I always tell people to remember, always keep a smile in your heart.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And see you soon. Thank you. Take care.